30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of Face to Face. Face to Face is one of two different programs that I have the pleasure of hosting and producing live every single week at AccessTV.org studio. Face to Face is a show that's designed to ask the guests the hard questions and give you, the viewers, the answers and information that you deserve to know. This morning on the Face to Face talk show, we have a well-known social activist. He has a television and radio talk show. He has a prominent political figure as a lifelong resident in Detroit, Michigan, to go along with many other titles and recognitions that he has been noted for through his life works. The guest this morning on the Face to Face talk show is no other than the CEO of the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, Inc., located in Detroit, Michigan, Reverend Horace Sheffield. Good morning, Reverend Sheffield. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Glad to be here, my friend.
It's our pleasure. Reverend Sheffield, could you let people know a little bit about yourself and background before we get into our main topics of discussion?
Sure. I was born in the midst of the labor and civil rights movement. My father was vice president of the Negro American Labor Council under A. Philip Randolph in the early 40s, and of course was one of Dr. King's lieutenants, which afforded me the opportunity to witness firsthand some of the greatest movements in this 20th century, or in the 20th century, and of course led me to question why I was born in that milieu, in that environment, and accepted my call that God had wanted me to see that so that I could do the same thing at a later time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Reverend Sheffield, you are the CEO of the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, Inc. Could you let people know exactly what this association and organization purpose and design and its mission towards what it's looking to accomplish and what it has done?
Well, every other ethnic community, minority community or non-minority community is organized. Polish American Conference, you have Ukrainian Council, of course, the Jewish community been well organized. And so my father, who was an organizer for labor and civil rights, decided that we need to have our own kind of infrastructure, bringing together all the Black organizations under one umbrella. And R.C. Davis, who came when we founded, said it's not the rap, it's the map, not the man, the plan. And to have really a consensual, rational, structured way to arrive at, what's in our best interest. Not one person over here, as we've seen, for example, in this whole issue with Target, but pulling everyone together, measuring what is in our best efforts. And that's what we've done now for 46 years. So you'll find the Divine Nine, you'll find the Urban League, NACP, but not only those organizations that represent what I call middle class interests, you also find, other groups that may not reflect middle class values, but us coming together and figuring out what is the best way up together.
Well, Reverend Sheffield, if a person in Detroit or the Detroit metro area is having a particular issue with health, housing, just being able to function day to day, and they was able to come to your organization, would their issues instantly or somewhat be able to be resolved, or would you, if you're not with your organization able to help resolve the particular situation, could you at least steer them in the right direction where their particular predicament can get resolved?
Well, those two issues that you raised, we could help them here, but in general, yeah, we cannot assist. We don't simply tell people that's not in our tool house or wheelhouse. No, we will refer them, and we'll actually stand by them. But we have housing. In fact, we're in the process of building 2 new homes and right adjacent to our parking lot. We have a full-time clinic that we fund, McCauley Health Center, with a family nurse practitioner and a doctor. We don't charge a single penny for any of the services that we provide there. We have substance abuse programs, all of that. We try to be all things to all people according to their needs. But, the important thing is they come to us and trust us. If we can't do it, we'll find someone who can, but we'll also oversee it to make sure they get the kind of care they would get here with us.
Well, Reverend Sheffield, where does the funding come to keep the association under operations?
Well, it comes and goes. We're now in an era, by the way, Jonathan, where organizations like ours are under attack. We've had, I think, 3 different major grants we've lost with the new administration. They're taking documents out of the African American History Museum in Washington, D.C., but they're also taking money out of the pockets of folks who serve this population like we do. But we're pretty blessed. We have, individuals, for example. We have one donor who's donated as much as $700,000-800,000 a year. We have a multitude of grants. We also do our own fundraising. We just had a wonderful 46th anniversary with Joanne Reed here. We had a concert with Kindred Family Soul and Bruce and I forget the other group. Anyway, Chrisette Michelle. So we raise money. We have individual donors and we write grants.
Reverend Sheffield, you think kind of what maybe separates your organization, the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, differently than other organizations is that you have a combined effort and commitment of all, if not all, definitely a large segment of the different organizations. What is the NAACP, let's say for one example, or any other particular organization, all connected and working somewhat as a unit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have a Panhellenic Council, for example, and we have sororities, fraternities. We have community groups.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what makes us effective, Jonathan, too, is that we have assets. We have a major radio and TV programming. We just got a major grant. We're building our own studio launch in Detroit Community Network. I have my chief of staff over here watching your intro, taking notes.
Okay.
I have a 24-hour station. My dad's archives are shared with Dr. King's in Boston and Daisy Bates down in Little Rock. So major collection, video, audio, and we'll be running that 24/7. And so, those are the things that, because we have a live studio broadcast every Saturday on 5 different 50,000 watt stations, we're able to publicize the stuff that our other affiliates do. We work in concert with them. But the other thing that's important with respect to that is we really preach collaboration. We're all trying to save the race. There's no reason for us to still be lost, except we try to do it on our own and not together.
Well, that's very impressive that you have the type of operations in place and the way it's expanding. And I will say one thing, if someone wanted to kind of duplicate or learn what your particular association as the Detroit Association of Black Organizations are doing, would you be open to kind of let people
Absolutely.
know? It would be? Okay.
Well, let me tell you, you're the first to hear this, Jonathan.
Okay.
We have a meeting scheduled with Judge Greg Mathis, who worked for my father, came out of this organization, and Jamal Bryant and Nina Turner. Years ago, my dad was alive when Ben Hooks was head of the NAACP. The National Convention voted to replicate this organization and to establish the National Association of Black Organizations. So my dad and Shirley Chisholm chaired that, and it lasted a couple years before my dad died. We revitalized it. We refiled our paperwork, and the four of us are sitting down together to relaunch that. We need a national collaboration so that, again, stuff like Target. You know, I had the first chapter outside of New York. I've known Reverend Sharpton since I was 20 years of age. In fact, talked to him Sunday. You know, we really need a more structured way. When my dad was around, they would meet in airports. Jesse and, you know, and Andy and all of them, they would fly in, Shirley Chisholm, they meet for a day and leave, but there was no infrastructure, which is why Shirley Chisholm and my dad created the National Association of Black Organizations. So your answer is yes. We want to set up chapters in LA, Labo, or Wyoming, Weibo, you know, whatever.
Right.
Weibo, Able, let's make it happen. I'm available, yes.
Exactly. And I think Detroit is known of having a lot of famous people from Detroit. And let's just say for one example, I would assume Smokey Robinson no longer lives in Detroit, but I could be wrong. But just to use that as an example, if you wanted to spearhead something with different people originally from Detroit that no longer lives in Detroit, do you have the connections to be able to connect with someone like a Smokey Robinson or other people like Ray Parker or Jr.? There's a lot of celebrities, famous people from Detroit that may no longer be living in Detroit. So do you have that type of networking or connection?
Look, I know people all over the world. You know, this last week, for example, I was able to connect Byron Allen. Someone was trying to reach him for, he was trying to reach someone that I know very closely. I won't mention their name. And of course, I reached out to Byron and asked if it was all right. So, I mean, I connect people. I know people everywhere. I mean, you know, I'm close friends with Mike Epps. As you well know, Jonathan, celebrity has a lot of pull in our community. People like that can get folks to do stuff that we could never. And so I think it's important to leverage personality with grassroots and people who have a desire to do things, but may not have the means to make them happen.
Okay, Reverend Sheffield, from 1979, I believe, when your association was established, the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, is that the correct starting year?
Yes, sir, April 1979.
Okay. What would be some of the major differences between what was somewhat, I guess I got to say the word, plaguing Detroit, or what was some of the major problems and issues in Detroit in 1979 that the association was trying to resolve and, you know, spearhead a different movement compared to what we have today in 2025?
Well, I don't think it's much different. Our goal was to create functional unity in the Black community. We don't have to all look alike. We don't have to walk alike. We don't even have to walk or run alike, but we need to do some things together. And I think the media and, you know, opening of doors have exacerbated our inability to really come together. Social media, all those things, you know, make it possible for a person to think that they're contributing simply because they posted something, who you then cannot get to show up or lift a finger or protest or do anything otherwise. So aside from that, I mean, our health, in many ways may actually be worse. I mean, we're still addressing that with the resurgence of white power and white supremacy and MAGAism and everything else. I mean, the whole issue of racism, which really never disappeared. It was at least it was a different social convention, particularly under President Obama, has now almost gone back to the days of Bull Connor. I mean, we see looting of our libraries, elimination of any kind of focus on anything Black, and so I mean, you know, the only difference is we're lynched in the courts. You know, they don't wear white sheets; they wear black and blue pinstripe suits. And then the other thing I think is the biggest difference, Jonathan. I'm certainly open to having this conversation. Is the sense that Black people don't feel that there's a real need for them to organize anymore. That the folks who are subject to scrutiny, subject to being beaten down or police brutality somehow or another different than us. We're not like them. And whatever's happening to them is probably because they're ill-informed, uneducated, or have some kind of moral, issue that has impacted their quality of life. So, I mean, that's my take.
Well, would it almost be like saying that some black people who are, let's say, well off feel like maybe the need of organizing and working together is not really so much of an urgency or a need comparable to the people that is still struggling, knowing what it's like to not be able to function day to day for whatever particular reason? You think it's a difference in the classism that exists with black people?
I think absolutely the issue that we've always faced has been classism across the American landscape, but that's true for African Americans, people of color today. I've met very well-off people who don't want to associate with us until they need us.
Right.
Until they find out that they're just Black. We have a slogan here at DABO with T-shirts called "Just Black," and it came out of someone who was prestigious and prosperous. I mean, look at Oprah Winfrey over in Paris, getting put out of a Louis Vuitton store, I believe it was, or Gucci. Well, it was Louis Vuitton. And so at the end of the day, they're finding out with all their wealth, all their influence, the circles they travel in, there's some incident that occurs that reminds them or teaches them that you're still Black. Then they want to identify. Then they want Reverend Sharpton or Jamal Bryant or Cornel West or whomever, even me sometimes, to come to their rescue. But I found out in all those instances when they needed us, they were with us. But the moment the agony's been abated and their issue resolved, they go right back to being without us.
You think maybe the title, sometime when people label Black associations or Black organizations, that might somewhat turn some people off, or you don't think that's the real issue?
I think there are tons of Black folks. If they could wave a wand, wouldn't be Black.
Okay.
They don't embrace Blackness. And I was working on a little piece that I'm a preacher. I'm not like them. I'm not like them. But the unfortunate thing is for those folks is that they can't get away from their skin tone. And no matter how well they do and how much money they amass, at some point in their lives, it's going to come down to them being Black. Now, let me tell you the problem we do have is that we have an administration that is trying to excoriate anything Black. And so we do have some Black organizations that have been confronted by the federal government with respect to the change of their names. And so our community is actually having meetings about what do we do? Do we just stand up and fight? And do we give in to excoriating our Blackness? Or is there some other way for us to fight without losing everything we work for? So it's a tough question.
But also, would it be fair to say that the Detroit Association of Black Organizations is willing to help other people outside of the Black race?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had one of the strongest Black-Jewish relationships and working relationships from our very beginning. 1983, when Soviet Jews were being persecuted, we took 3 or 4 bus loads to Washington, D.C. with Jews to protest what was happening in the Soviet Union. So we have had a great relationship. When Vincent Chin was beaten to death, in fact, we're part of the street renaming is going to be happening in the month of May. We stood up with the Asian community to fight what those auto workers did. We've had a host of things. When Dearborn had a parks ban against non-Dearborn residents that discriminated against, Middle Easterners and Blacks, we partnered with whites of good faith and Chaldean and Arab communities and fought back. So yeah, we formed the Detroit Inter-Ethnic Coalition, where we pull all of the disparate groups together and sit down and talk about what struggles we have in common, and how our shared bond can overcome them.
Okay. Detroit, I think if I'm not mistaken, it has the largest, or definitely one or two, either one or two, the largest black population of a large city in the United States. I think Memphis could be number one, but I'm not sure. You can clarify this.
Well,
But
I think Detroit is 80% African American, 86% African American.
okay.
And our population now is right about 700,000. So even if Memphis was 90%, there are more of us.
Hmm. So when people will say the word minority, technically blacks in Detroit wouldn't be labeled as a minority because you're the majority population if you go by just the actual numbers. Now, if it's some other particular clarification that people use that word minority towards, then you can definitely put that into the mix. But
we're the majority. We're the majority. We're a minority majority
okay.
in the city. Yeah.
So when it comes time, let's say for minority contracts, does black people, would they be excluded now because you're not the minority? How would that whole process go about when you get into contracts?
Well, Detroit under Coleman Young actually, and that executive order doesn't exist anymore. But we've been very conscious of Detroit-based companies, which eliminates the race factor, but given the population of our city, certainly enables African American contractors, and particularly women, in that category, to be able to compete well. You can't set aside anymore. You can't have contracts specifically for people of color. All that's been forbidden post affirmative action. But there's been some banter under this previous present administration that maybe enough Detroiters have not benefited from contracts. I think the mayor and my daughter, who's president of council, have done a tremendous job of identifying black contractors, even equipping them, providing match money and things of that nature. And so I think we do have a burgeoning class of black entrepreneurs that have positioned themselves to do very well in this city.
And former basketball player Vinnie Johnson is a very successful business person in Detroit or the Detroit metro area. Would that be one good example that you can kind of highlight a little bit about how his operation has been so well established?
I'd be so happy to do that. Big Piston fan, had season tickets, went to Joe Dumar's home in Natchitoches, Louisiana, to his mother Tootie. Been to his home here. So I love the Pistons. They have been one of my prime sponsors. Last year we gave Benny an award. His sister accepted it, and they've been just very generous contributors. But one of the issues, you talk about what other people do to us, I've spent the last 5 years, and I'm going to continue to do it, is talk about what we do to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the African American business group that gives certification for African American businesses refused to certify Vinnie Johnson's Pistons. Went to court, he won. I spoke out against it. How unconscionable is it that a black man who owns a company, because he has a variety of whites, because the nature of his business is so specialized that he needs, engineers and architects and people with those kind of professional degrees, be excluded from being certified as a black business. And that's not something that a white business association, that's not what the Chamber of Commerce did. Mm-hmm. That's what a bunch of black folks did.
Right.
And yet we talk about what they do to us. Why don't we wield the influence we have in the circles that we control better? Because I believe this. I believe that they learn how to treat us by how we mistreat one another.
So that means, again, there's some tremendous internal issues that
I'm preaching that. Don't open. Come on. Join the church, Jonathan.
Okay. All right.
I love everybody. I'm not a harsh person. I don't call people names. But just think about how unconscionable that is. That an organization that can certify businesses as being minority owned, whether female or black, refused to do that for this man
Mm-hmm.
who owned the business.
Right.
Anyway, I just think we got to really at some point be honest with ourselves that until we treat ourselves better and get our house in order, then they're going to always find a way to do the same to us that we do to ourselves. I'm done with that.
Yeah, I think internally you got to always make sure your internal issues is in check, because it's always easy to point the finger outside to someone else. But sometimes what you just mentioned, when people are doing things to your own, I don't know all the exact details, but you just basically explained it.
We have enough of our own stuff. Paul had a song, my dear friend, Let the Dollar Circulate. We have enough of our own money that if we taught our dollars some sense and cause them to be governed by us and how we support one another, we wouldn't have to be mad at white folks all the time. That's why other folks are respected. That's why Jewish people are respected. That's why they're able to tilt the whole entertainment industry when things are wrong, because they wield influence with their dollars.
Right.
That's what we've got to do. And when we do that, we don't have to ask for respect. We buy it.
Well, certainly the dollars, we consist of dollars, so there's not a problem that we don't have the dollars. It's just not turning over. If the black dollar is going out within 6 hours, and a city like Detroit with so many black people living in the city, it would be hard to picture that y'all don't have enough black businesses that can stay supportive. But then again, it could be a small percentage of other ethnic groups who are basically running a lot of the businesses in Detroit. And then
that's true everywhere, John.
That's true everywhere.
Yeah, certain people run the party stores and all that, but your point is well taken. I looked at one point at one census tract in Detroit and the amount of disposable income that was available to the residents who lived there, that was 94% African American, and 86% of their money was spent outside of Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Well, the only thing I would say about that is if there's legitimate services that you can't get in Detroit, then there's no problem or no fault why you have to go outside.
It's not true. It's a disposition. My dad had a Buy Detroit campaign, and of course I had Black Gas, and NACP has Buy Black, and we actually surveyed every kind of conceivable thing that a person might want to purchase, created an index and everything else. What it is still this loathsome hatred of one another. We still believe that white folks' water is more wet, ice is colder, and yet we have phenomenal entrepreneurs in our community. We have the Avenue of Fashion, for example, and there are plenty of black businesses downtown. The problem is if they have one bad experience, they're never going back. If you go to someone else's store that doesn't look like us, we grant them indulgence. Well, they must have had a bad day. We'll come back tomorrow.
Right. Well, you just mentioned downtown Detroit. Let's kind of shift a little bit of the emphasis of what's taking place currently in Detroit downtown and what's being projected for the future of downtown Detroit. Do you kind of feel that downtown Detroit is moving in the right direction for the best interest of the city?
Well, first of all, let's give kudos to Coleman Alexander Young, who had the vision of wanting to rebuild downtown. When he was mayor, someone said, Brooks Patterson, I think it's Patterson's name, said, when the last person leaves Detroit, turn off the lights. So he always believed that a viable downtown would buttress the neighborhoods. And so a lot of our resources, he convinced us to invest in downtown. So that was his vision. I think that there's no doubt that Detroit is somewhere that it has not been since the 1950s. I was born in 54, almost 2 million people. You had top hats and red carpets and stores downtown. You now have Midtown flourishing. You have businesses opening in the communities. And over here where I'm at, you have people, whites who fled and now running back. That's got to bode well for the city in the future. The problem that we have, and some say it's a perception, some say it's a reality, is that we're creating these areas that some folks think are theirs. In other words, this is a new Detroit, but it's for us who've come back. You all need to do something where you are. I think the mayor has worked very hard to try to bridge that gap, to try to indicate that there are communities throughout this city that are viable, that just need some additional investment. But the time will tell whether or not Detroit will be a city that embraces everyone, when it was a city that had restrictive covenants, police officers who ran roughshod over Black residents. If all of that making us not feel welcome in our own town is something that's going to return us gone for good.
Well, I would have definitely assumed, like most downtown sectors throughout the country, it will become more expensive to live and most likely even do business in downtown Detroit. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of things are happening similarity all throughout the country. But you're trying to also address that there's people who just feel like they want to just associate with a certain class and a certain segment in downtown Detroit and don't really want to deal with the other segments of the city.
I mean, if you like the Gold Coast, you want to be near the No Coast. I mean, look, certain people left this town because they didn't want to coexist with us. White flight was real. The problem that and by the way, there's still communities to this day that whites have left Detroit that have still not really integrated. The Polish people left. The Lower East Side, where the Pole Town plant is, they moved to Warren. You can look at all the things that have happened in terms of police brutality. I think what Detroiters are most concerned about, the ones that I know, generational residents, who, by the way, are not just Black. You have whites that have never left. You have Hispanics that have never left, is a degree to which their communities are going to benefit from this influx of people and this new development. Now, with respect to rent, Jonathan, when I came out of high school in 1972, I could rent a 3-bedroom flat right near Wayne State University for $200 a month. Those days are gone. Rent has gone sky high. I don't care if you're downtown, which is unbelievable. I mean, rent now is $2,000 for an apartment down there. But in the neighborhoods where people have 2-family flats, you still talking about $1,200-$1,300 a month. And so it's gotten high. I think one of the things that I love about my daughter is her fight for affordable housing, making sure that that's included in all the new developments and making certain that we begin to set money aside, not just for developments that have a portion of those units available for affordable housing, but developers who are doing projects that are completely affordable. That's what we're trying to do here at DABO.
Mm-hmm. And that's a huge task. I mean, when every time you get into affordable housing, and I think even how people define affordable housing, because some people will say 1,000, 2,000. I mean, I'm not an expert in this particular category, but I do know that's a national problem as well when you get into market rate housing and how housing is now being developed. But the political landscape, how do you feel with the current?
Let me just say something about affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on a call. I was on a call Tuesday about a grant that is trying to address barriers to poverty. I cannot release it yet, but I can tell you one of the things that were in that aggregation of data that was mind-boggling. And that was that 42% of Detroiters make $18,000 a year or less.
Mm-hmm.
How can you afford $1,000 a month rent when you only make $18,000 a year?
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, you see, I think that opens up another door when you mention that, because when people say, well, you get more education, that will solve your income problems, you take 2 or 3 different jobs. I mean, there's always something that people can combat you with when you point out those numbers. I think people should, now, honestly, some jobs are going to pay more. You can't dispute the fact that if someone is an engineer, they're going to make more than a warehouse worker. But there was a time in Detroit that the average semi-skilled high school grad can graduate, get into, I guess at that time, the auto industry and other similarities, and make a good livable wage.
Yeah, you can walk out the high school door, my friend, and go to GM anyone and get a job.
Mhm.
Those jobs, I mean, almost over half the jobs in the auto industry are gone. UAW membership is down to 600,000 from almost 2 million.
Mhm.
Those jobs are gone. Cost of education is phenomenal. And by we're seeing a shift. I've got 2 granddaughters, see them behind me. I've paid for their college, but I also made it possible for them to get that money, because by the time they get out of high school, college may be obsolete. But your point is well taken. Detroit was a city that was based on high wage with low education and low skill. That's now gone. So we've got to find a way to a better way to include those folks in the economy, not least of which is a fight for $15 is a minimum wage.
Yeah. So that's, again, I think the economic structure has to be resolved. When you're talking about housing and affordable housing, you can't exclude or leave out the economic structures, because even if you put all of your money into housing, whether you're even trying to become a homeowner, you got other expenses that you have to be able to cover. So I think the economic structure, and I think we mentioned it earlier about the dollar. There is dollars in Detroit, particularly the black dollar, that could stimulate a lot of businesses and, change the whole landscape. I think if you're
you got insurance. I mean, we're redlined still. The insurance rates that we pay for our homes and our vehicles are really an abomination. And in Michigan, they've added credit score, for example, which has nothing to do with your driving record or anything else. But yeah, I mean, the poor get poor and the rich get richer.
Right. And I think sometime, and I've said this before, and we had a guest talking about the history of Detroit. Sometime throughout the country, people like to label all of the negativities about Detroit. And I think it has come across that you've highlighted what you're trying to do. We didn't really get into many of the negative problems when you get into gun violence and other social unrest. But I think at the same time, you're fighting, it sounds like, with your association to make a difference really for all people in Detroit. And you really come across that you're really sincere, and you've been able to utilize your history from your father and the political movement and the union movement to a lot of key areas. And I think it definitely needs to be commended and highlighted throughout this particular segment.
What I'm trying to do is what my dad told me he tried to do, turn a pile of bricks into a cathedral. I think one of the problems we have is we spend all our time blaming other folks. We don't see what we have available to us. Look at the strength of the Black church. Look at the professional organizations. This is why we have an association, because if we can pull all of our people together, and not in a Black love or Black empowerment that looks down on other folks. I mean, that's something the MAGAs got to learn. You don't have to be bigger than me and have be better than me by putting me down. But we got to start with what we have. We have enough talent, enough institutions, enough disposable income that we can build our own wealth. This is the promised land. This is what God wanted for the children of Israel, to no longer have to make brick from straw, no longer be subject to being dominated by another people, but to bring them out and to put them somewhere where they could have their own. And I think if you look at honestly what the first generation removed from slavery, and even during slavery, they built our greatest institution. What have we done to parallel what these people did with fourth grade educations, with calloused hands and bare feet? We ought to be ashamed of ourselves.
Well, I always try to find a positive, uplifting way, and you definitely came across on a strong statement that we should be ashamed of ourselves. So I will say this could be a good segment or a good way to kind of close down this particular segment of the face-to-face talk show. But as I ask every single guest every single week, if there's any last words, any last things that you would like for people to know about yourself or what you're currently working towards, feel free to do so.
Yeah, well, two things. I always want to encourage people. I'm a pastor first. And I had a young lady that was a student in my alternative high school who was getting emancipated from her parents because she had been involved in sexual abuse. Her biological parents, her mother allowed her father to have sex with her. And, we assisted her in explicating herself and all. Make a long story short, the day she's supposed to go to court, the family showed up, father, mother, and were going to try to take her and keep her from going to court. And all of my students came out there. I was so close to wanting to jump on this van. And the young lady grabbed me. She said, Pastor Sheffield, don't get in trouble. There's nothing else they can take from me, nothing else they can do to me, because I've learned how to dance in my darkness. And I want to just tell people, man, look, your best strength, your greatest gifts come from overcoming things which seem insurmountable. Don't give up, just keep fighting. The second thing is that we can do this, but we got to do it together. I love to create a coalition in your community, find a way to help you get it going, be a part of our National Association of Black Organizations. I think the time has passed where we build our progress on one person. You go back to A. Philip Randolph and Marcus Garvey. A. Philip Randolph, by the way, my dad's mentor, actually went to the president at the time and encouraged him to do something with Marcus Garvey. Let's have collaboration, not competition. And as Mary Church Terrell says, let's lift as we climb.
Well, those are going to have to be your last words. I mean, you have a door open anytime you want to get your issues addressed. I'm kind of doing a trilogy about Detroit, so you're the second segment, the second guest that I have had on directly talking about the city of Detroit. And I learned a lot this morning, and it definitely sounds actually comes across very encouraging of what your organization, the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, is about and what you're definitely working towards. And definitely congratulations in many other areas that I and other people may not be aware of. And keep up the good work.
And I'm sure you meant my last words on Face to Face today is what you meant, right?
Yes, your last words on Face to Face. I didn't mean it no other way, definitely. And you definitely,
I know you didn't mean you need to go somewhere and be quiet. I didn't mean that way.
Well, we're running out of time. That's really what I meant for this particular show. But it was a pleasure.
Thoroughly enjoyed your conversation with you, Jonathan.
Definitely. Keep up the good work with what you're doing, Reverend Sheffield. Take care. Okay. This is Jonathan Small. I just enjoyed hosting this edition of the Face-to-Face Talk Show with the very special guest. He is the CEO of the Detroit Association of Black Organizations, no other than Reverend Horace Sheffield. And it was a real dynamite show to have him as a guest. And I hope for you, the viewers out there, you was able to find this particular show not just informative, but also encouraging as well. Currently working on a show and a guest for next week. But until you see me again, for people out there, keep up the good. Have a blessed day and keep up the faith. Thank you.